often like to view creepy things on the internet. I don't totally know why. I've just always been intrigued by things that are just off. Any media is fine to take in content. Stories, movies, videos, audio clips, video games, whatever. I just want to be unnerved. I work third shift, so my sleep schedule is all messed up. I sleep through the day and work at night. I get 2 days off a week, though, and always in a row. I could use this time to have some semblance of a normal life. But I'd rather not have to readjust my sleep schedule once work starts again, so I just stay up all night and sleep during the day. So browsing the internet on one of those days off, I came to a thread which had a bunch of links on it. Each comment was just a link. Some of them led to websites about unexplained mysteries, some were streams of horror movies, and others were accounts of paranormal events which were allegedly true. Then I saw one that was none of the above. I don't remember what the link was, it just had random letters and numbers. It was nonsense, and I clicked on it. Then it took me to this single picture, on this single page, and nothing to click on. It also full-screened and refreshed at random intervals, anywhere between roughly 2 and 10 seconds. And then there was this text on top of the picture which read, Zan Lu Walt X to X? Something like that. I don't know. It was weird. Creepy. I already liked the site. The picture showed a painting on the wall of a nondescript forest scene. There was a small TV screen centered at the bottom of the picture. An old CRT display, really. On top of the TV was an older-looking analog clock with a wood frame and fancy hands. The site continued to refresh, but the picture never changes. Now, out of sheer curiosity, I didn't leave the page. I just kept the tab open and checked back every minute or two. And there wasn't a change. After about 10 minutes, I got tired of missing the refreshes. Maybe it was changing drastically, but only once every minute or something, and I was completely missing it. So I closed all the other tabs to make sure I wouldn't be tempted to leave. I was staring at the picture for what seemed to be an hour. I checked my phone, and it had been about 26 minutes. I mean, I guess time goes super slow when you're just staring at a still image online. I can't say what it was, or when it was, but at some point I noticed that it wasn't just a still image. Well, it was, but the image was changing, specifically the clock. When I first pulled up the page, it read something close to about 4:15. Now it was showing 4:56. The clock had actually been changing the entire time, and I watched it for a full minute. And somewhere along the refreshes, I saw the minute hand change to 57. The time on the clock didn't reflect the real time, however. Still though, that's dedication. That means someone had to take a picture once every minute for an hour, or at least 45 minutes, and then have it change every minute. And I kept watching until it showed 5 o'clock. I expected it to shift back to 4, but then it just went to 5:01. And that's even more impressive. Maybe it went for a full 12 hours. I mean, at that point, somebody kind of needs a job, right? Anyways, I'm hooked. I had to see if it had the full range of times. Now that I know it didn't have to intently stare at the picture anymore, I didn't have to bother, I was able to shift my focus to the text, and it definitely seemed strange. I realized quickly that it was a code of sorts, and it said XIIXIX. I thought about it for a while, and then I realized the colon in the phrase. XII:XIX, 1219. So I guess I have to wait till 1219 to see what was going to happen. What was so worth all this work, really? Well, needless to say, the next few hours were boring. I check it every so often and see no change. Once I thought I saw something in the painting, but I'm pretty sure that was just my imagination and my mind wanting to see something. I saw all of my clocks in my house for the time on the site, so I know where it was even when I wasn't at the computer. 12 o'clock came and I was glued to my computer. No getting up, no other tabs. I was staring intently, watching the hands on the clock refresh, minute after minute. 12:18. Refresh, refresh, refresh. And I was certain that this minute had actually taken 4 or 5 minutes to actually transpire. And finally, 12:19. Nothing. No change in the image, no change to the site. Fuck, that was disappointing. I figured I'd at least get the message on the site or a different picture or something. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe that was the prank, yeah. Nothing. The guy who made this would lure people in, give them a simple puzzle to solve just to pique their intrigue and then disappoint them greatly. Bravo, I thought to myself. Or brava, I quickly corrected. I left the website and went back to my day. I couldn't get that site out of my head, though. Not even an hour after I left, I'd convinced myself that I should go back to the site. Control-Shift-T. After all, there are two 219s in a day, aren't there? The clock now said 12:48. I looked over at the clock on my desk and it also said 12:48. The creator must have kept it synced up with their local time or something. I had a nearly 12-hour wait ahead of me now. I could have stayed up all night. Night for me, day for most people. But I didn't want to drive myself crazy, so I went to sleep. And I didn't sleep well, nor for very long. But then again, I rarely do, so no surprise. I checked the clock on the desk, which was still set to the website time, and it said 8:52, only a little over 3 hours of wait from here. I checked the site, and still no change in the image. I did things around the house and online to kill the next few hours, and as soon as the clock was near 12, I was once again seated firmly in front of my computer screen. The next 18 minutes were agonizing. The last minute was even worse. The hands of the clock struck 12:19, and once again, nothing happened. I'd invested a lot of time into this. The minute wasn't over, though, so I continued to watch. And then, I heard a click. Quiet, but still audible. After that, I noticed that the webpage wasn't constantly refreshing anymore. The screen on the TV began to brighten. Finally, what I had waited for was happening. As the screen on the TV brightened, I began to be able to make out an image, and it was small, because the TV screen on my monitor was about 2 inches wide. But I could still clearly see what they were showing. Woods. Maybe it was the forest in the picture. The camera was bobbing up and down as grass and leaves passed by. And it must have been someone filming themselves walking. The camera had kept pointed at the ground for the first minute or so, but then slowly started to point more horizontally, and I could see that they were coming up on a yard. Some houses flashed quickly on the edges of the screen, and then there was some talking in another language. Now I couldn't say what the language was, and then clicks and clunks, and that they were dealing with equipment. The camera made larger movements than before, and then I realized, as those sounds had went away, and the image stabilized dramatically, that they had been setting it up on a tripod, and once they got it set up, I heard a little more talking. And the camera made this one final turn, and during the turn I could see that it was just set up along the woods. The camera finally stopped shaking, and there was a house centered within the frame, and as small as it was, I could tell that it was my house. I jumped up from my desk chair, but kept my eyes fixed on the screen. The men abandoned their camera and walked up to the home. My home. They stood at the door for what it was about 20 seconds, but it seemed like 5 minutes, and I don't know what to do. I don't know if there was anything to do. They knock on the door, and I heard it faintly through my speakers, but it wasn't at the door. Not hearing it within my house calmed me down enough to check that door. Nobody was there. Nobody was in the yard, but I couldn't make anything out past a couple 100 feet. It was dark out, and the moon wasn't incredibly bright. I closed, locked the door, ran back up to my PC. The screen was still displaying these two men standing at the door, and they knock again, but this time harder. And I watched as his door opened. The man answered it, and I couldn't make him out. I was half expecting it to be me, and I was relieved, though, to see that it wasn't. I have brown hair, and the man on the screen had red hair. One of the men gestures something to him, and the red-haired man begins to close the door. At this point, the other man shoves the door open again, pulls a gun from his belt, and shoots the man in the head. I feel my face go pale and my jaw fall open. The vision started to go black, but I forced myself to keep my composure. The two men ran from the door towards the camera, and in the small TV screen on my monitor, and in the blur of motion, I could still see that both men were smiling widely. They grabbed the camera, not bothering to take it off the tripod, and ran into the woods again. The camera swiveled on the tripod and showed one of the men's faces, but quite blurry. He looked at the camera, reached over towards it, and with his other hand, and the screen of the TV went blank. The page refreshed again, but only once, and the clock still read 12:19. I leave the browser and even shut down my computer. I run to the door one last time to see if I could see anything, and once again nobody was there. To this day, I have no clue what actually took place, and I haven't had the nerve to revisit the website, or ask anybody what happened to the people who lived here before I did. And honestly, I'm not sure if I ever will. And ladies and gentlemen, that was 1219, an interesting creepypasta. Before we actually go into this, I'd like to actually mention that the person who wrote this, Jacob Beach, actually has a Amazon whole book that you can check out as well. Maybe you should, if you ever want to check out, if you found the story good, you should go hit that up. I decided to include this because it was mentioned at the end of this creepypasta. So again, if you did like it, do the person a favor, check it out, give it a shot. But moving on to the analysis, obviously courtesy plug for the individual aside. Ladies and gentlemen, that was 1219. One of the stories that I clicked on, and it was interesting. It wasn't terribly long. It was a quick creepypasta. Compared to like Ted the Cave or any of that nonsense. This was a story about an individual who sat in front of their computer and frankly had plenty of time to look at a web page that was refreshing constantly, with an interesting fact of the clock always moving, which, by the way, required a lot of work, a lot of storage space. I mean, I'm telling you right now, video file wouldn't be that big of an issue. Having almost 12 hours of having hundreds of photos just sitting over there, that's dedication to your web page. Now, the logistics of creating a web page like this wouldn't be terribly difficult. In fact, we've actually seen elements of this type of a page on the Deep Web series when we looked at one of the more recent rabbit holes, where if you kept on clicking on an image, it would keep returning the same thing. It would just keep going on newer pages. So to have a page where the clock hand changed wouldn't be terribly difficult. In fact, you could actually pull that off without even taking photos anyways, with a lot of time on dealing with Adobe Photoshop, or frankly creating a graphic on After Effects and just making pictures and rendering them out on a very, very quick basis. You could actually make this completely by hand in a matter of a couple days if you have the proper web development talent and the photo talent. So you could actually make this. It's not an impossible site. In fact, the way I described it, the logistics of making something like this are incredibly easy. Now, to have the video at the end, that's a little interesting, get into the whole snuff category. This is literally something that you would kind of see, on one of those deep web rabbit holes that we look at. And I wouldn't be surprised if I came across 1219. I think that's kind of where the inspiration for one of these at least kind of came from. But looking into this as deep as I could, this was a very interestingly done tale. For once, it was something where it had the restraint that I was craving for in a lot of creepypastas. One that didn't really go into the whole, in the end, 2 people busted into the dude's house and put 2 into his chest. No, it didn't play like that. In fact, if anything, it left you on that note where you wondered, is this sort of like a ritual for this home that they cover? Is every tenant really given this? I mean, that's a little bit of a stretch, but it's one of those things you end on. What's going to really happen to our protagonist? Is there going to be a sequel called, 1220 or something like that? I don't know. You sort of wonder what happens as an individual. Of course, the person's all alive and well, and that's what we know up until the end. But with 2 people who put a camera on a tripod in front of this in front of this place, open the door, put one into this dude's head, and just walk away. That's a little messed up to come across. I mean, you have to put yourself not into just a suspension of disbelief, but you also have to put yourself into the protagonist's shoes. If you browse websites on the internet that are incredibly creepy, or they have a rabbit hole-esque scenario to them, and you come across something like this at the dead of night or whatever time really, it's gonna spook you. And if it's your house, as much of a stretch as it looks like, it's gonna scare anyone. If I saw my home, it wasn't me in the video, and some dude got his head blown off, I would sell this home. I would move. That's what I would probably do. But that's where this creepypasta shines. It's not something terribly long, and it's not something super short where you get nothing out of it. It's something that keeps you unnerved. It's one of those campfire tales. Again, these are campfire tales. And if something can keep you glued to the screen for the duration of its entire story without making you cringe, it's done a good job. This is a very decent creepypasta, and like the 3 a.m. myth, this one stands up pretty well. I have to give credit where credit is due. So I think as far as analysis go, that's really all I can say. Now, this is again one of the many stories included in this book written by Jacob Beach. I'm only giving this a courtesy plug because it was mentioned in the story, and I figured, if I'm going to read the story, I'm going to definitely plug this individual and hopefully drive as much traffic as I potentially could to him as well, because they really do deserve it. It was an interestingly done story. As always, I ask you what you thought about this in the comment section below. What do you think about it? What would you rate it? What would you change to make it better? This has been another episode of Creepypastas, part of Haunted Gaming. If you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike it if you dislike it. This is me, Mudahar, and I am out.